All right, so this is kind of embarrassing, but this is taken straight from my drawer. So I believe this shirt's about 10 years old or 15 years old, somewhere around there. This one is, I think, about 15 to 20 years old. I think this one I dug up out of a grave. And this one right here, I know for a fact is at least 25 years old. I may have a problem. Okay, before we go any further, I do promise I'm going to throw those shirts away. I need to do a purge and get rid of some of the stuff and really work on my problem. So in my life, some people would call me frugal and some people would call me cheap and other people would just call me a tight ass. But in this video, I'd kind of like to share with you my mindset and how I came to be the way that I am. So let's get started. So with that being said, obviously I didn't grow up with a lot of money, and I was kind of taught to make sure that you took care of whatever it is you had, no matter what it was. My parents used to say, take care of what you have or you won't get anything else. And now that I think of it, if you take care of what you have, you really have no reason to get anything else. I have to ask myself, was that a trick from my parents to get me to take care of my things and they wouldn't have to give me anything else? Or is that a life lesson where if you do take care of what you have, you're going to need less things? So in this video, I'm really going to try to explain my mindset and why I am the way that I am. And is this a nature or nurture sort of thing? And for me, I think it's a little bit both. So when I was a kid, I literally used to count pennies. And for some reason or another, it would drive me nuts if I did not have a full and equal dollar. I had to have a dollar. So if it was close to $2, I had to have $2. If it was close to $3, I had to have $3. And it kind of drove me nuts a little bit. So anytime that I had 97 cents, I would ask my mom, do you have 3 cents? Because I'd like to make a dollar. And this would go on. Sometimes I asked for 10 cents, sometimes 5. Well, my mom kind of gave it up at the time I asked for 87 cents to make a dollar. So yeah, this kind of started young with me counting money and my mentality as far as looking at money in a different way than most people. So I never had a lot of money when I was growing up. My dad worked in a factory when I was very young and was making maybe $8 or $9 an hour. And my mother worked at a place called Revco, which is kind of like, I guess, today's Walgreens. And she made very little money as well. Of course, since both my parents worked, a lot of the times we'd have to have a babysitter, but sometimes we didn't have the money to. So my mom would take us to work and we'd sit in the back while she worked, or sometimes we'd help and put pricing tags on a lot of the items. And sometimes if her boss came into work, she would kind of tussle us out into the mall area and sit and watch the fountain until her boss went away. Neither of my parents came from money either. My dad grew up in Hazard, Kentucky, and he grew up in a coal mining camp, Kenmont coal mining camp, and went to a one-room schoolhouse and ended up going into the Army later on, and then got factory work. My mother, on the other hand, she lived in Corbin and didn't have indoor plumbing until she was 16 years old, and then met my father at a rather early age and was married by 18, and fast forward from there, she worked at Revco, as I said before, and my dad was a factory worker. As far as myself, I grew up mowing yards at probably about 8 years old. I was shoveling snow and trimming bushes and what have you. If you're the smallest one, you can climb up in a tree and cut some branches, things like that. And by the time I was 15, I was able to legally work finally, and I got a job at a nursing home in the dietary department, and I made an awesome $4.20 an hour. I did it, Mama. I saw another opportunity where I could sell candy bars at school, and that would help pay for my uniforms each year, a bag, things like that for my sports. And so that helped out a little bit. And I remember even at one point I broke my foot and we didn't have insurance, so my parents couldn't take me to the doctor, and I borrowed crutches off somebody else, wrapped my foot up, and went about my way. Luckily, a few years later, we did have insurance when I broke both my feet. And around this time, my dad had been working in this factory for about 32 years and was pretty abruptly laid off. And I think at the time he was making $11, $12 an hour. Even though money was tight before, it became a lot tighter. The things that I did pay for, I had to pay for a little bit more. So my parents couldn't afford to give me money for lunch. So those days where I would eat lunch, and there were days where I said, well, I may need this money for another bill or something else, and I wouldn't eat lunch. And that's kind of how things went for a little while. So let's fast forward a little bit through all those struggles to kind of where I am today. I believe all of that is important though, because it really kind of sets the path to the person you do become eventually. And that's kind of where you learn about the value of money, especially when you are the one who has to, at an earlier age than most, budget for yourself to do things you, one, need, and two, want to do. But regardless, the lessons I learned from the value of money and the idea of take care of what you have has stayed with me forever. And here's an example. So for Christmas one year when I was 8, I got a bike. And it was, we'll just say my first boy's bike, because my first bike was a girl's bike because I couldn't get on a boy's bike. Anyway, I was 8 years old and I got this bike for Christmas. And this thing meant the world to me. So fast forward a little bit and I'm 20. I moved to Florida and I do not have a vehicle. So guess what I have? I have the same bike that I got when I was 8 years old. And that was my transportation for 2 years. And guess what? I've never had another bike. So I still have this bike. And from time to time, I still ride it. I actually have a car now, so I'm lucky there. But I still have this bike. And obviously this trend continues for me. I have a 2006 Chevy Colorado that I bought in 2006, and I still have the truck and I still drive it, and I've taken care of it. So for me, it's really like that old saying, a penny saved is a penny earned. And I know it's an annoying saying, but it's absolutely true. If you decide to spend something, then that money's gone. If you decide to save it, then it's almost like you earned it, and maybe you can take that money and invest it in something else. And that's exactly what frugality has allowed me to do. In the past few years, I changed professions into something that makes a bit more money, and my frugality has allowed me to save the majority of that money. I then in turn took that money, got into rental properties, as well as investing in the stock market. So frugality in and of itself is not going to save you, but it's going to allow you to be able to take chances, to use that money to make more money. And one of the big things that I worry about is safety. And what I mean by that is I do not want to be a person who has to depend on that next check to pay the next set of bills. I've been there and I've done that before. It's not a great feeling. So for me, it's important to get into a position where, let's say I'm sick, can I still pay my bills? Because this literally happened to me just recently. I had to take off work for a few weeks because I got ill, and I was fine. I still had money coming in from other places. I had saved up a nice safety net, so if I needed to pay bills, I did. And I also established myself in a position where I have very few bills. So even when I was off for that 2 weeks, I had nothing to pay. The worst thing, I lost that amount of money that I could have made from my job, but it didn't matter. I was okay. Hey guys, that's it for the video. Make sure to like, make sure to subscribe. I appreciate you guys supporting the channel, and I will see you guys next time.